Welcome to the Chief Endurance Officer Podcast. I'm your host, Greg McDonough. Each week, we hear real-time stories from athletes and CEOs on how to maximize performance through an endurance mindset. Let's get started. Well, welcome to the Chief Endurance Officer Podcast. I'm your host, Greg McDonough. I am super excited to have a long-term friend on our podcast today. She is a best-selling author, motivational speaker, executive coach. She's globally recognized as an expert in goal setting with over 30 years of experience in the field of self-help and positive psychology. Her newest book, Big Goals, continues to bridge the gap between ambition and actionable steps, equipping readers with essential tools for success. Please welcome Caroline Miller.
Hi, Greg.
Welcome, Caroline.
Hi, thank you.
So good to see you on this side of the microphone.
It's fun. This is really fun. I can't wait to see where this goes.
So as you know, we love talking about endurance and the endurance mindset. So Caroline, how has your endurance mindset impacted your life unexpectedly?
Wow. Okay. So I had to overcome bulimia 40 years ago when there was no hope or help or cure, and it was a death sentence. And one way or another, and I would point to a few variables. One was living in Baltimore, Maryland at the time. Second was there were a few recovering bulimics who I met in a self-help group for compulsive eaters. And I latched onto them. They gave me hope. And one day at a time, I truly got my life back. And that endurance, if we're going to call it an endurance mindset, and I think that I love the terms that you have coined that are yours and yours alone, that is the touchstone upon which I've gone back and done every hard thing since then. Because my mantra is, if I could overcome bulimia, when it was widely thought that you could not overcome bulimia, I can do this and I can do that. And so it gave me character, it gave me grit, and it gave me hope that I could do a lot of other hard things.
Let's unpack some of that. I love the story, but you mentioned Baltimore as a key factor.
Yeah.
Can you unpack that a little bit? Like why that city? How did it impact your recovery?
So interesting. So you bring up a lot just with that one question. No one's ever asked me why Baltimore. That's where my husband had a job. He was in a law firm in Baltimore, and we lived in a really lovely suburb of Baltimore once we kind of moved around and got settled. And I tried everything to overcome bulimia, willpower, whatever. And I just ended up, because of a small ad in the Baltimore Sun, at the self-help group for compulsive eaters. And we know that and this, now I'm speaking as someone who has kind of marinated in the field of psychology and especially positive psychology for the last 20 some years, that the fastest way to change or build a habit is to change the circle of people who are around you, because emotions are contagious, behaviors are contagious, grit is contagious. And in these 12-step meetings, in these arenas where you find people who are just doing hard things, not for a trophy, not because they want other people to admire them, but they're there to both support other people and do hard things that will make them better people, it becomes a contagious environment of success. And there's an upward spiral of well-being. People who don't know anything about overcoming alcoholism or eating disorders or gambling or whatever, when you go into meetings where people have a common focus like that, there's a lot of laughter because there's some absurdity to the things you used to do. And just how did you get here? And certainly I felt that way at times, but I really credit hitting bottom in my early 20s with having nowhere to go but up. And so Baltimore just happened to be the place where all those wonderful ingredients came together to make me the woman I am.
So you talked about changing the people around you to change habits. Could you talk about that a little bit more and give us some more examples?
Yeah. So I know this is a finding. This isn't me just Caroline saying this is kind of fun to speculate. This is a finding that we catch the moods and the behaviors of the people around us. So Angela found this with grit. She found that when you go into West Point, there was this age-old problem where they couldn't figure out, how do we figure out who's going to drop out that first hard summer? Beast Barracks at West Point, they had been really noodling over this for generations, really. Is it grades? Is it leadership scores? Is it SATs? What is it? And what it came down to was Angela's very simple, at this point, I think it's a 12-item scale. I think it was 20 items at one point, grit. And they found that if you roomed a lower grit cadet, lower grit score cadet with a higher grit score cadet, it was contagious. We know that moods are contagious. I just spent the weekend at the University of Pennsylvania surrounded by all these, amazing people who also graduated from this program. But Sarah Pressman in particular, who's at UC Irvine, she's done wonderful research in the field of health psychology on the contagion of smiling, the contagion of good mood. So is Barbara Fredrickson at the University of North Carolina. She found that high quality work teams, or work teams where you have upward spirals of well-being, a ratio of 4 positive interactions or comments to 1 negative, not only are they higher performing and thriving and flourishing, but they're making more money, they're making better decisions, they're more creative. So those are just a few examples of the contagion of positivity. On the other side, we know from Nick Christakis's research that it's contagious to become fat. So in networks of people where one person gets, obese, overweight, which is now a huge health condition in this country that we're all worried about because of what it means. Once someone close to you in your network gains weight and becomes obese, that becomes a norm in your network, your close collection of friends. So quitting smoking is contagious, but becoming obese is contagious. So you really have to take a look at who is around you when you're starting a habit, when you're trying to create something that's long-term, when you want to maintain well-being, when you're pursuing a goal. Let me say one more thing. We know from Shelley Gable's research at the University, UC Santa Barbara, she found that when you have a big goal, a big dream, something that's important to you, the first person you share that big dream and goal with has the capacity to actually cause you to abandon that goal and code it as a negative or keep going. And it's by one simple thing. How do they respond to your big dream? And if it's anything other than curiosity and enthusiasm, beat it, run, contain that person. You have to watch what is it that people say to you that might be passive aggressive, passive destructive, active destructive, or are they active, constructive, curious, and enthusiastic? Create an environment where that is your norm because, boy, it's the rocket fuel of success.
That's fascinating. I would love to apply it to, let's say we have an audience member who's thinking about taking on an ultra marathon, right?
Yeah.
50 miles, 100 miles, but they just can't get off the couch.
Mm-hmm.
So help us apply some of this thinking theory to that individual. Is it truly as simple as sort of find a new tribe and that tribe will help you sort of get off the couch?
Mm-hmm.
Help us through that a little bit.
Well, I'm going to go right to my new book, Big Goals, because I think the answers are all in there. So the first thing I talk about in the book is goal setting theory, Locke and Latham's goal setting theory. At the start of setting any goal like this, you have to ask yourself, is this a performance goal, i.e. a checklist goal, something I've done before? I know what the steps are to success, particularly excellent success. Or is it a learning goal, something I've never done before? So let's say someone's never done an ultra marathon or a marathon or an Ironman or something that's going to involve a lot of training and grit and mindset change, et cetera. If it's a learning goal, the first thing you want to do is flatten your learning curve. And so in the book, I talk about start with goal setting theory and move to my bridge methodology, which bridges the 20th century approaches for goal setting to the 21st. And the first thing is, where can I find people who look like me, who have my background, who have maybe my physical disability? Maybe I have a limp. Maybe I have a certain medical condition that's going to cause me to have to train a little bit differently from someone else. Flatten your learning curve and find a relatable role model. That's really important. Then when you go to, so that's B, brainstorming. R is relationships. Who am I going to put around me? Is it a coach? Is it a nutritionist? I know that one of the things you preach and do so well is when you want to do something hard, like an Ironman, you surround yourself with people who have the answers, the people who are going to help you become your best self in pursuit of this goal. So that's part of it. But you also have to look at the other side of R, relationships, which is who are the people I have to contain and keep away from me? Who are the negative Nellies or the Debbie Downers, the ones who don't want me to succeed? Maybe I'm holding a mirror up to them because they're not setting big goals anymore. And then you go into the I, investments. What do I have to invest in terms of time, money, and energy to make this happen? Decision-making. What are the decisions I need to make about when to go, when not to go, when to pivot? Is this still the right goal for me? in the book, I talk in particular about something called noise audits. So Danny Kahneman, who won the Nobel Prize for his work in economics, he found that it's not just bias that causes us to make bad decisions, it's noise. It's being presented with two identical situations, but making different decisions depending on our sleep, or did our football team win or lose the previous day? We have to do noise audits. So that's D, decision making. And of course, the book has more information on this. G is grit. Grit is a selection of qualities and behaviors that you can cultivate in yourself: passion, persistence, purpose, patience, the ability to take risks. Humility is a huge piece of grit. Make sure that you've got the qualities of grit that you will need in order to do something hard and not be a quitter. And E is excellence. What are the excellent standards I am shooting for in this goal? Because that which cannot be measured cannot be achieved. You absolutely have to have a standard for excellence before you get going, because that's how you know you made it, and that's how you know you're getting warmer or colder. So that's what I would advise. If you pick up my book, Big Goals, there's pretty much nothing you won't be able to create a strategy for and at least get close to. Maybe you'll succeed. Maybe it's bigger than you are, but you know what? You're going to have the best fighting chance if you go through this process, because it's all scientific and it's all evidence-based, and there's nothing in there that is not research-driven.
So I have to ask, for somebody who isn't as deep into goal setting, this feels like a lot. It feels like a lot of work in order to get to a finish line. Excuse the pun. How do we take that first step?
I think the first thing we have to say to ourselves is we live in a quick fix society where we think just, texting an emoji of a pizza and getting Domino's to drop it at our front door, that's not normal. When we want to do hard things that we will value and code in the long run as things that we're proud of, we're going to have to do certain things in order to be successful. And I really want to get people away from this whole law of attraction or even SMART goals, which is not goal setting science. And I want people to understand that you have to prepare for success. So just start by saying, if I have something I want to pursue that's going to be a game changer for me in terms of how I feel about myself, my confidence, how I see the world, what I'm going to accomplish in my profession, in whatever you're talking about, you should sit down and create a strategy that does involve thinking around the corners. The ancient Stoics called it premeditatio malorum. Premeditate the evils that are coming in front of you and prepare for them. Be ready. But I also add premeditatio bonum. That's just my own kind of take on the Stoics. Premeditate the good that's going to be in front of you and capitalize on that and savor that as you continue to go towards the finish line of whatever it is. But we don't live in a world where you can just blink and chant and write in lipstick on your mirror that you want something to happen and expect for it to happen. As you know, I've been on a rant for years about this, raising kids in an environment where we were told to just make them happy at all costs, tell them they're winners, remove all stress and anxiety and obstacles from their lives. And boy, they're going to be confident. They're going to be high achievers. The opposite's true. The research is in. We now know what happened, and we created narcissists and sociopaths, and they did not come out of this with a work ethic. So sometimes they get into the workplace, and the first place anyone's told them the truth is when they get a performance review, because we all know grade inflation's a real thing, and the average grade at Harvard and Yale is like an A-. And that's just not reality, people. Grade inflation is not giving you real feedback about yourself. Create a strategy and get the feedback that's going to allow you to be proud of the progress you make and the success you pursue and achieve.
You've left me a lot of breadcrumbs to chase. But before I get into those, I have to ask you, so you've got a license plate behind you that says Get Grit.
I do.
Talk to us about Get Grit versus Got Grit. Like, do you build grit or do you already have it?
Gosh, you ask really good questions, Greg. So some people are born with some of the ingredients more than others. Girls, for example, are born and little girls have more self-regulation and less impulsivity than little boys, possibly because of testosterone. I don't exactly know, but I know that that's what the research says. But people can cultivate grit, and that's exactly why I wrote the book, Getting Grit, which you also see behind me. And I wrote that book because I realized as Angela Duckworth, who's a friend of mine, just a wonderful, generous, compassionate friend, researcher. I met her at Penn. I realized that I had had success and talent in my life. I had, as a therapist once very kindly said to me, I was a billboard walking towards you. I looked impressive, but there was nothing behind me. I had a billboard. I had resume virtues. I went to Harvard. I graduated magna. I had nice swimming times. I played the piano well. I mean, I did all these things well, but I didn't have grit. And the time I developed grit was when I did what I already told you. I set a goal that was intrinsically motivated, which was my recovery from bulimia. It wasn't my parents, it wasn't my teachers, it wasn't my culture's goal. It was my goal for myself. Therefore, I was willing to cultivate this passion and persistence and ability to get back up after the world knocked me down and I had a slip, or I made some bad decisions. And that was when I realized I cultivated grit. And that's why I wrote the book, because I realized if I could cultivate it in my 20s, because I chose one big hard goal that the world told me was nearly impossible, and I achieved it, wow, you know, then other people can do it too. Because why write a book about things that are hardwired? Why write a book about things that only very special people are born with? Anybody can cultivate grit, and it's one of the worthiest goals that any of us can have for ourselves, because our children look at us when they're growing up and they see that mom or dad has had a disappointment and they still stood up and kept going. That's how kids learn grit, is in the closest circle around them. They see what people have to do to keep walking after disappointments and big setbacks. And I think you would agree with that.
Yes, 100%. So take us back to your 20s. You recovered from bulimia. When did you decide, or when did the light bulb come on that you needed to share this story with the world, that you were going to turn into a best-selling author, motivational speaker? Like,
Yeah.
give us that little time frame. Was that sort of a mid-20s dream that sort of brightened a light bulb, or was it something that was sort of tucked inside you for many, many years
Yeah.
prior? Like, when did Caroline Miller kind of come to life to what you are today?
Gosh, you're asking questions no one's asked me before. So I just got goosebumps. So let me just honor that for a second. Um, I had no idea that I would change the world or change my own world with the book. My name is Caroline. But I knew when I recovered, and I had 4 years under my belt, 4 good years of recovery, and I felt certain I wasn't going to, slip backwards. I I've always loved writing. I wrote for different newspapers. I was an editor at the Harvard Crimson. I'd had summer internships at places like the Wall Street Journal and New York Times, and I just love to write. I see words in my head. Some people see pictures, I see words, and they dance in a very nice way in ballrooms together. So that's just my dirty little secret, is I used to carry dictionaries around with me. I love to write. And so I decided that, given what I knew about the field of eating disorders and recovery, that nobody had written an autobiography about bulimia. And I thought the world ought to know that one woman got better who's telling her story publicly, that I have no shame at all about this. This is nothing I'm ashamed of. In fact, I'm very proud of the fact that I can name it, claim it, and overcome it and talk about it, because I believe it has removed shame for other people. And I wrote to Ali Sheedy, who was in the Brat Pack. I saw in USA Today, a little profile of Ali Sheedy. I hope I'm not dating myself, but I am. And it said her mother was a Manhattan literary agent. And I thought, oh, I need an agent if I'm going to write a book. So I very blindly wrote to the Charlotte Sheedy Literary Agency, told her who I was, my story. I may have included a few sentences or chapter. I don't remember. Put a stamp on it, an old-fashioned stamp, put it in the mail. And this woman called me and she said, come to New York. I want to meet you. You have a book inside of you. I met her in the lobby of her apartment building, and the rest is history. There was a bidding war. In among publishing houses. Doubleday won the war. I was excerpted and put on the cover of, I think it was March 1987 or April 1987, Washingtonian magazine. That was unbelievable, what happened to me. I mean, and then the book came out in February of 88, and I was flown all over the country. I can't even tell you. It was like a bomb going off in my life. I didn't expect any of it. I just thought, I have to tell a story, and this story might give people hope. But when I look at the thread of book 1, My Name is Caroline, to book 9, Big Goals, The theme is there, which is do hard things. And I want to give you hope that if you have the right tools, you too, dear reader out there, you too can set big goals and have big dreams and accomplish them. So clearly, there's an ikigai. There's a purpose to why I'm still alive and not one of the many people who's died from my eating disorder. That's why I'm alive. That's what I'm here to do. And that's what my books seem to communicate.
That's awesome. I love the do hard things and expect unexpected results, right? Just by the fact of putting your shoulder into it and getting it. So 9 books. Wow. You must have a writing process. Can you talk to us about your writing process? So us who, I've got 2 books out. They're very, very small titles at the moment. But similar to you, I love being creative and putting things on paper and et cetera, et cetera. I would love to know what your writing process is. Like once you figure out what your 10th book is,
I know what it is.
What happens? Oh yeah.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter. The words are already dancing the minuet in my head. And they're going to have to come out and talk to us at some point because they're going to drive me crazy. So first of all, I want to honor you and say you're one of the most creative people I've ever met. I mean, you really are. You just have you have these ideas and you go look into things and you investigate. You're such an early adopter. And I so admire that about you. And so my process, so let me go back to big goals for a second, talking about Locke and Latham's goal setting theory. My first book was a learning goal. I'd never written a book before. I had an IBM luggable. It was heavy. It was like 28 pounds and I would carry it around and I'd set it up and I didn't know how to write a book, but I just sat there and kind of tried to figure it out. And the rhythm is you get up and dress as if you're going to work and then you sit there and then you just get these words out and then in the afternoon you edit. I developed a process. So at this point, it's a performance goal for me. So when I get a book contract, I know how to set up word counts. I know that I have to often isolate myself with nobody contacting me. I have to create big blocks of time. So at this point, I can promise an editor or a publishing house within 4 months, you'll have this from me. Within 6 months, you'll have this from me. And that's only because I've done it before. So I turned this learning goal, this big goal of doing a book, I've turned it into a performance goal. So my process is very, very clear. One thing I will say that I don't do is I refuse to read competitors. I feel so strongly that authors' intellectual property is how they put together their ideas, in what order, with what words, with what research, with what examples. And I see too much, faux grit, fake grit where people steal other people's ideas. I mean, it's hard work to come up with something new and innovative. And so I don't read competitors and I just spend a lot of time. I think you know this about me. One of my favorite things is I get those huge Post-it papers and I stick them on walls. And I put on my binaural beat technology, my headphones, and I just create and think. And I walk around, I write on the walls. And some of my best work is when I have brain.fm in my ears. That's kind of Holosync stuff. And I find that that's when I come up with things that the world hasn't thought of before. And I'm just so proud of the fact that this book, Big Goals, has been named a must read for November 2024 by the Next Big Idea Club. And I'm in the running as one of the finalists for 2025 because what I've put together is so new and so different and so disruptive around the field of goal setting. And it all started with that process of lots of blocks of alone time, taking myself seriously enough to do this and telling all the people in my life, clients, often I need a couple months off who patiently wait for me to come back. My husband, I send him to our beach house. I'll see you in a couple months. Walk the dog as much as you can. But people now respect my process. At first, I think people judged me for my process. Now they respect it because they see what happened. So that's part of it. But thank you for asking.
Yeah, it's super helpful. Caroline, you left me a breadcrumb a little while ago talking about SMART goals, and you made a comment that SMART goals are not scientifically based.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes, I can. So how do I go into this? So I think a lot of people do not know goal setting theory. I would say for the last 20 years, ever since I learned it, I've been all over the world, worked in big companies, small companies, big countries, small countries, fewer than 5% of the people, probably fewer than 2% of the people know the science of goal setting. And I think it's because everybody assumes that this catchy acronym SMART goals is goal setting science, when in fact, it was just a consultant. Some dude in 1982 who was going into a meeting and he just said, oh, let's make it specific, measurable, action something, relatable, measurable, time, whatever. The problem is that that's not goal setting science. In fact, if you use the word or realistic for your process, you're actually undermining any chance of excellent success, because goal setting theory says the best outcomes are always what's called challenging and specific. So reach out my hand, past my fingertips is challenging and specific. The other problem is that this acronym has been so misused that there's a name for it, jargon mishmash syndrome. There's a professor who came up with that, where it means different things to different people. So it could be measurable. It could be, what are some of the realistic, action-oriented, actionable? In my book, I have this long list of terms that it's come up with. It's just different for so many people. So it's not accurate. So the law of attraction is also garbage. I hate to say it, but that's 20th century magic. Forget it. Just forget it. It doesn't work. It's just for people who don't want to do the hard work. It's time that we got down to the hard work. SMART goals and not goal science. OKRs and KPIs are also not necessarily goal science. It would be very unusual if Locke and Latham's goal setting had been built into a productivity or dashboard or whatever. Just start with this basic fact. Please, everybody, please, if we do nothing else, at least ask the question as you go into any goal that you have to accomplish for your job description or yourself. Is this a learning goal or a performance goal? A learning goal, moonshot goal, something I've never done before, the world's never done before. Performance goal, or is it a checklist that I can make because I've accomplished it before, like a surgeon or a hotel maid, or a pilot in a pre-flight check? Do that, and I hope I've just killed off the zombie approach that won't die. SMART goals is not goal setting science, people. Please, 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 please.
Super helpful. Shifting gears slightly, Caroline, obviously you're an author, 9 times over, number 10 coming. What else do you do? We mentioned at the beginning, executive coaching, motivational talk. Give the audience a sense of how they can engage with you.
Well, we met in a swimming pool. You and I met at a swimming pool because you were training for Ironman competitions. So I'm a competitive master swimmer. Last couple of years with COVID, it's been hard for me to find a team that actually had pool access, but I'm just getting back into it and it's so hard. But I do compete in master swimming. I've been lifting weights for 30 years, and just, asterisk for all women out there, all women should be lifting weights. And as a woman who had a history of disordered eating, one of the things that follows women is osteoporosis. And took my daughter, I have 2 sons, 1 daughter, took her to the doctor. I had her watch me get a DEXA scan. I said, this is why I'm getting it. This is what you need to know as a woman. And I turned out I'd reversed all the damage that might have been done. So I do weightlifting. I'm a black belt martial artist, and I'm working towards another black belt right now in a Chinese system called Siwei Kyun. I have a beach house where I run strategy retreats with CEOs and leaders. And, I'm a wife and a mother and a grandmother. And I'm really, really just loving my position in life right now.
I would love to know more around the martial arts and how that has impacted you over. Obviously, you started as a white belt and now you're a black belt almost 2 times over. I mean, that's a journey, a multi-year, multi-decade probably journey.
Yeah.
How has that impacted your writing, your career, your family? Give us a sense of what positive impact, or what positive, what impacts it's had on your life.
Another good question I've never been asked. So first of all, I think the martial arts is a wonderful example of a learning goal where if you've never done a martial art before, you've never gone from white to yellow to gold to green to purple to red to whatever, depending on the system, the colors are all different. You look in the mirror and you watch yourself get better, but you also look up in the studio. And I was told in my first black belt, Hapkido, that when you're a white belt, walk like a black belt. You look around and you see examples of what you want to become just all around you all the time. And so it's taught me how to be resilient. It's taught me to break big goals into little steps, stripes on your belt. Okay, so I can do these 3 stripes and I go to this, and it's 3 stripes. I mean, it's a laid out system with skills and things that you have to demonstrate, fighting, weapons, forms, breaks, board breaking, whatever. It's just all laid out. This is how you get here. So it's a wonderful example of a learning goal for a person that can turn into a performance goal. So my second black belt is a performance goal now. So I know it'll take me a few more years to get to black. And I've been doing this one for 10 years. So this one's really, really hard. I also think that all women should learn the martial arts because I walk down the street differently. I look people directly in the eyes. I know how to disable them if I need to. I know how to really hurt them if I need to. I know how to defend myself. My daughter got a black belt. We both got black belts in Hapkido when she was young, and I wanted to do it with her. She walks differently. She's 5'11". She carries herself differently because of it. But too many women don't know how to defend themselves. And in the process of doing a martial art, you learn to be aggressive. You learn to meet the eyes of people who are fighting against you. You learn how to have a fair fight, shake hands and bow at the end. There's a lot of decorum and mindset that you learn in the martial arts. So I think I'm a better person. I think I'm a more humble person, but I'm definitely a more confident, skilled person who could protect myself and loved ones if necessary with my bare hands and feet. And that is something no one could ever take away from me. It's like a college education. No one will ever take away from me what I've learned and what I know I can do.
It reminds me, my daughter did martial arts from a very young age up until, I don't know, probably 10 or 11. And to your point, she walks differently into a room. She carries this confidence with her. I'm not sure it's related, but that confidence is certainly there. And I think part of it is the martial arts, the discipline, the mindset.
Yeah, it is. And you've made a point of raising your daughters as athletes. And I think that it's so important for women to know that their bodies are not just things that you're going to see on Instagram and airbrush and put in a certain size. What can your body do that is something you can be proud of, that, that indicates strength, not skinniness? And thank goodness I'm not bulimic in the era of Instagram and the bullying and the things that are going on with girls and their well-being. And, that's another thing as a recovering bulimic, being in a martial arts uniform. It's, it's bathing suit. Nothing is left to the imagination. That's hard for a lot of women, but it's a baggy uniform, and you're never focusing on how skinny you are when you're doing the martial arts. You're focusing on how strong you are. That message is critical for girls and women quite often.
100%. And that's a whole third and fourth podcast. Caroline, an audience member wants to get in touch with you. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
I would say 2 ways. I used to say just my website, carolinemiller.com, but it's also now biggoalsbook.com, where I have case studies of the bridge method, how to use it and how it has been used in history. And also what if you skip a bridge step? What are some of the greatest failures in the world? So that's how you do it. And I would just say, please, for the holidays, whatever you celebrate, give big goals to someone who has a dream. And I wrote it to be readable and useful for teenagers, for college students, for youth, for managers. Everyone deserves the science of goal setting theory, because we all have dreams and goals, and we all deserve to have the tools that'll make them come true. Give it as a gift, because I think it's the gift that will keep giving. Because as I said, you can't keep what you don't give away. And I think we have to learn this science and pass it along. So that's also the message I want to leave you with. And thank you for asking.
It's a great message. And we'll include those links in our show notes for sure. So if an audience member didn't catch that quick enough, just scroll down and you'll find it. Caroline, this conversation has been amazing. And as we've discussed, right, we've worked together and had a friendship for many, many years. And I have to tell you that the performance versus learning goal concept has revolutionized my performance and my learning and my journey. Like, there's been times I'm trying to take on something new that if I just shift my mindset from this is a performance goal to this is a learning goal, kind of allows you some freedom. So
Yeah.
thank you for that. Audience members, if you got some value out of today, please like the show, please subscribe, track Caroline down on Instagram and the socials. Definitely order her book that we'll be releasing around the time this show goes out. Awesome show. Thanks for your time. It's great to see you.
That is so moving what you just said. I'm about to cry, but thank you very much. This has been great.
Thank you for tuning in to the Chief Endurance Officer podcast. To hear more inspiring stories and strategies around the endurance mindset, be sure to subscribe below or visit us at chiefenduranceofficer.com. Until next time, keep pushing those limits.